Welcome to the Driving Change podcast on the Evergreen Podcast Network, where we live at the intersection of neuroscience and storytelling. If you love great stories and you love understanding the mindset it takes to be a world-class change agent, then join us as our fascinating guests from all walks of life unpack their unique journeys of perseverance and passion, of expertise and experience, and be inspired to use your own story to drive change. Welcome back to the Driving Change podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Bloomfield. Today's guest, I think many of you are going to connect with. I'm really intrigued with Amanda Waesch's story because not only does she hail from a part of the country that I hail from, which is more northeastern Ohio, but she has a really interesting background. And now she's actually the vice president at a law firm called Brennan, Manning and Diamond, where she heads the national healthcare practice, focuses on healthcare, employment law, corporate law, healthcare litigation. She's a baller, as they say in legal terms, right? So my wife and I are like on season 5 of Suits. So I just pictured like Jessica, who, if you guys know the managing partner, this is Amanda. She's like Jessica at BMD Law. But I want to learn her story and her background, not just because she's a very accomplished and successful attorney today, but she's also a very successful and accomplished mother and spouse. And she's balancing all of these things in today's culture where it's like we're all on a treadmill on 11. And so she must have some secret to her energy as well that we want to tap into to figure out how she gets all this done. Because I know I've certainly, and it's an admirable career to be able to do and be so successful today to be able to do all that. So we're going to dive into her backstory and her professional affiliations as we go along. But the audience, I'm sure, is really more interested in where you came from, how you got to where you are today, and what are some of your secrets to success in everything that you're doing, from time management to working in complex situations to working in environments that maybe there's a lot of ambiguity involved in a lot of those things. So we'll get into all those things with you. But first of all, just thank you for being on. I'm excited to unpack your story with our audience.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Now, she did get her law degree from another place I'm familiar with, which is the University of Akron, which I'm an undergrad in. So we both have a little zippy kangaroo in us. So that'll be fun
That's
to
right.
talk about as well. And of course, she got her BA from Mount Union, which if you don't know what Mount Union is, it's like this amazing college in Ohio that I think they went like 10 years without losing a football game or something crazy, right?
That's right. We have the winningest coach in NCAA history, right, for football. That's all across all divisions. And I was really proud to be part of that dynasty because I was a cheerleader at Mount Union.
Oh, wow. Okay. See, we're already learning fun facts about Amanda. So where did you grow up? Tell us your backstory, your origin story. Tell us a little bit about, little Amanda growing up. And when you were 6, did you always wanted to grow up to be an attorney? Like, tell us a little bit about that early days, what you learned about yourself then and who your influences were in your life.
Absolutely. I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be an attorney. And I don't know where that came from because I don't have any attorneys in my family. I have a great uncle that married my aunt. So she married the attorney, but he lived out of state in Florida, and he did labor and employment law and ultimately became an arbitrator, a very well-known arbitrator, by the way. But I wasn't particularly close to him growing up. So I don't know where the drive to become a lawyer, but I was 3 years old walking around saying, I'm going to become a lawyer. I'm going to go to law school. And at that time, the only law school I knew of was Harvard Law. And so I focused my entire academic career around going to Mount Union because I knew I was going to go there as a 4th generation student, and then go on to Harvard Law. And obviously I didn't do that because you said I went to University of Akron. I'm very happy that I stayed local and did go to the University of Akron. But life threw me a couple curveballs and said, no, you can't plan everything out, right? And so I had to learn how to roll with the punches there. But I always knew at a young age that I was going to become a lawyer. And I told my family that all the time. I told teachers that. And my parents were really the ones that said, yes, you can do whatever you want. We will support you. And they really said, if you really want this, you have to work at it. And so they said, you've got to be responsible for your studies. You've got to teach yourself how to study and do well on tests. And really, they were the driver behind putting the driving force in me. And I'm very grateful for that.
So whereabouts in Ohio did you grow up?
So I grew up in a little town called Rootstown, Ohio. Many people probably have never heard of it, but if you're familiar with Northeast Ohio, we have a medical college. It is now called Neomed, but at the time it was called Neo-UCOM, and it's very well known. It's in Rootstown, and the reason that they picked Rootstown, it was right off the highway, and it was in between Youngstown and Cleveland and Akron, which is where they drew a lot of their students and then sent them off for their residency. So that's where I grew up. I grew up next to a cornfield, no air conditioning, right? And, running around barefoot in the summers. And that's where I live today, actually in Rootstown. My husband is from Rootstown, and we met when I was in law school, but he's from Rootstown. Our families are there. And so we built a home there, and we raised our children there.
So wait a minute. So you met your husband today, who's from Rootstown in law school, and you're both from Rootstown. Like, this can't be a thriving metropolis. You didn't know. How did you not know each other, girl? I mean, this is amazing.
We kind of knew each other, right? He's a little bit older than me, so we kind of knew each other. And that's actually one of my curveballs that life threw at me. I had just attended law school orientation, where you go before, your classes start. And they did that. It was at the time when they had everybody in the auditorium. They said, look to your left, look to your right. One out of you three is not going to graduate. Kind of putting the pressure on. Law school is all about pressure. It's getting better than it was. And they said, whatever you do in your first year, don't get married, don't move, don't have a baby, don't change jobs, don't make any major life changes, because you need to focus on your first year of law school. That's your foundation. And if you can get through the first year, then you'll graduate. And I remember thinking, okay, I plan out everything that I do in my life. And I came home, and I was living with my grandmother at the time. And she said, great news, I'm building a home and we're moving in the fall. And I thought, okay, that's one thing that we're not supposed to be doing.
Don't do box one, check.
Right, check. Okay. And then we went out after law school orientation, and she told us that we were moving. We went out to a local bar that my family would frequent, and walked my now husband, and he asked me out on a date, and the rest is history. So box two, don't get married or, enter a serious relationship. I did the night of law school orientation. Check. Yep. And we ended up getting married my third year of law school, right smack dab in the middle during Christmas break is when we got married, because I had planned out. I had already had a job at Brennan, Mann & Diamond, and I was going to take the bar, and I was going to start my job. And so he's very supportive of my career.
That's great. So I'm a farm boy from Mansfield, Ohio. So, it's very, very similar.
Oh, gotta love Mansfield.
In the middle of a cornfield. So we had lots of cornfields around us. So for all of you listening from around the country or even around the world, it is Ohio. There's a lot of farms in Ohio, right? There's cities. We have a lot of sophistication here. Let's let's don't make any mistake about that. But there are a lot of farms as well. But that's where a lot of our roots come from. Rootstown, right? I mean, it's where a lot of our values are instilled. And it sounds like one of the things I picked up from your story was, number one, you probably like to argue a lot as a kid. So there's something there. Maybe you're just good at arguing, so you knew you're going to be a lawyer. But one of the things you said I think is really valuable is plan and pencil. You didn't say it. I'm paraphrasing. We all should make plans, right? We get a vision down low. We know where we're going to be, where we want to go. We feel it, we see it, and we start to plan it. And that's important, but you got to plan that in pencil, because anyone who's had success that I've ever met, myself included, will tell you that the way things look today weren't the way things you thought they would look 5 years ago or 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. So having a little bit of flexibility, but without taking your eye off the prize, right? You never took your eye off the goal, the end goal of becoming an attorney. You just knew there was going to have to be a few winding roads to get there. So during that journey, tell people a little bit about, as you go through law school, which I've never done, what's that like? Because, we get those who have never done it before, it's almost this feeling like, wow, there's, again, I'm making a little bit of light of Suits, but when you watch these shows that have a lot of attorneys involved in it, to really truly understand the law and what it takes to pass the bar, I mean, it is a lot of information that you must know, understand, and be able to regurgitate in a way it proves that you know and understand it. So what was that like? What was it like from a student standpoint, but also how'd you balance relationships and family and personality, all the other things that are going on during that time?
That's a great question. One of the things that I am constantly trying to work on is balance. I don't really know or appreciate the word balance. And so that's always on my list of New Year's resolutions, is to learn how to balance better and learn when to say no and kind of know my limits. And so in law school, I try to do it all. And so I was obviously did very well academically, and I was very involved. I did trial team. I did. I was on the law review. I joined different groups, and then I also worked full time, but still maintaining obviously my relationships with my family. My family is very important to me, and then I also got married during law school. But law school, the experience, it could be summed up like this: the first year they scare you to death. The second year, they work you to death. And the third year, they bore you to death. And that was really my experience. Luckily, I love school. I have a passion for learning. So I really do well in academics. And I always say I'm going to go back and I'm going to teach. And I did teach a little bit at the law school before I had children. That was really important to me. But law school is tough. And you kind of climb this mountain. And after 3 years, you look around and you graduate. It's this culminating event. And then you're like, oh, shoot, now I got to study for the bar. I've got to take everything that I learned over the last 3 years and compact it into, a formula to be able to take a bar exam. And that takes about 2.5, 3 months to study for. And it's in Ohio, it's 2.5 days. And so we have probably one of the tougher bar exams because we have a lot of essays on our exam. I also took the Florida bar exam because I'm barred there, and that was a little bit easier, a little bit more multiple choice. But it's intimidating. But once you finish that bar exam and you get your results back, it is the most rewarding experience and feeling because it really is a unique mountain that you've climbed.
Yeah, wow, good for you. That's impressive. And what I just heard from that is all you attorneys listening in Florida, you're not as good as the attorneys in Ohio.
No,
I'm just saying.
Well, I will say that Florida they have very unique subjects on their exam. So you have to study for more subjects. You have to know more, but it's not as mentally fatiguing as I thought Ohio was because of all the essays.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, I'm just saying. Most people from Ohio, people don't realize that if you're not from Ohio, we're just smarter here. We're built different.
We are built different, right?
We're harder workers. We're smarter than you, Florida, but we do love your beaches. So okay, let's move
That's
on.
Right.
So tell us a little bit. So you have children, right? So tell us how many children do you have? Tell us a little bit about your family.
I have 3 children, and they are growing way too fast. They are 14, 12, and 10. I have a boy and a girl and a boy, and they're all very unique. And and they're all very close together, obviously. They're less than 2 years apart. So I would, get pregnant, have a baby, get pregnant, have a baby. My law firm was extremely supportive. I was on bed rest with all 3 of my children. They were all very high risk. I was in and out of the hospital. And so when I wasn't in the hospital, I was at home on the couch on bed rest. And that was during a time where we didn't have Zoom calls, right? Zoom didn't exist. You were lucky if you could figure out how to do Skype. So, remote work and work from home wasn't a concept. VPNs really weren't a concept. But my law firm allowed me to work at home. They had couriers that would bring things to my home so that I could continue to work from the couch. And they were just extremely supportive, and I'm very grateful. And I'm not sure, I've only ever been at this law firm, so I can only speak to my experience here. But I just think that my law firm is out of this world. Just very progressive, supportive, out of this world. I was the first employee ever to become pregnant at the law firm. So we were kind of developing the maternity policy together. And then for me to throw a monkey wrench in it and have, a very high risk pregnancy was a little bit different. So I cannot thank them enough for the support that they gave me.
That's great. Well, so, you said 14, 12, 10, is that right?
That's right. Yep.
So in this season, I mean, that's chaos. Like, it's not like they're not involved in stuff, right? None of them are driving. You got 14, 12, and 10. They're involved in probably all kinds of stuff. So what's a day and a week in the life of Amanda Waesch look like?
It's always chaos. So my husband is an athletic director and at our local high school, and he's also the head golf coach and the head baseball coach. So, and I'm very athletic as well. And my kids they just love sports. So we have about a 2-week window in July where we are not in and having a practice or a sporting event, and that's when we go on vacation. And so it's utter chaos all the time, but we love it. And my kids are thriving. They love the competition and the camaraderie and the different teams and just all their different friends and all the different things that they do. But a day in the life of me is get up probably around 5 a.m., right? I start a load of laundry or change up the laundry that I threw in the night before, unload the dishwasher. We get lunches ready, water bottles ready. I'll prep dinner if I didn't prep dinner over the weekend and get everybody off to school. I'll check email. And then I do work remote as much as I can, and then go into the office and then leave, early afternoon, like between 4 and 5, so that we can go to our next event. I always call it my second job. So I can go to my second job, whether it's practice or an event. Usually we're doubled up. On the nights when my kids don't have practices or games, I usually have conference calls and board meetings. And that's when I squeeze in travel and meeting with clients, because I represent doctors and they see patients during the day. And then we come home from our event or meeting and we just get ready for the next day, gathering up the laundry and all the dishes and finishing up those last emails and last projects. And so I really try to work around my kids' schedule. That's really important to me. I work a lot on the weekends. I do take a lot of conference calls on the weekends. It's helpful to my clients. It's helpful to me. So I have a very non-traditional, flexible schedule.
Do you sleep?
Yes. Sometimes not enough, but yes, I do.
So this is always a fun, fascinating, interesting question, especially in your situation based on what you just described. If I were to just pull your 3 kids in and say, hey, describe your mom for me, what do you think they would say?
My oldest, who's very intuitive and he's just an old soul, would say he's proud of me because he has told me that before. So that, gets you right here, especially when he's way taller than me now and can tower over me. My daughter would say that I'm fun because I'm her cheer coach. So I am living vicariously through her. We cheer 3 nights a week in the summer and then the fall. So she would probably say that I'm fun, but strict. And my youngest would say, I went on his school field trip yesterday, and he would probably say he's just happy to have me around. Because that's what he told me yesterday. He's like, great. I'm so glad that you were there. So they're all very, very different. But they do recognize how hard my husband and I work and how many hours we work.
But that you're still putting in the work there,
yes.
Right? So you're present.
So we're still present. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing I keep going back to, there's several times I probably would have liked to gone back and switched a couple of scenarios, but I think our kids' values they're caught, not taught, right?
Yes.
And they observe so much about how we interact and how we form and shape our lives around what we do, not as identity, but as all part of it. So talk a little bit about the team environment that must be created at home, and then how that works at work as well. Because obviously with you guys, everyone's running on such a busy schedule, your husband included. If you don't have a team approach to doing things and a little bit of self-sufficiency, then, it is Lord of the Flies around there probably, right?
Absolutely. Yes. It's definitely a team approach. We kind of do everything. It's group think sometimes, but it has to be. Sometimes I call it boot camp. It's like, all right, everybody, all hands on deck. Here we go. We're cleaning the house, or we're landscaping, or whatever we're doing, we entertain a lot. Our family's very important to us. My father-in-law he lives just down the street from us. He's over at our house probably every day, which we really appreciate and enjoy. We're very close to my grandmother. as well. And she helps out. She's in her 80s. God bless her. She helps out with the kids all the time. So it truly, truly takes a village. But the kids, it's just a way of life of, we got to take care of each other. We got to take care of the grandparents and the parents and just help each other out. And I can see that my oldest helps my husband out at the school a lot. We call him the assistant athletic director of the district.
Yeah.
And so you can see just kind of generationally, you could just see them just naturally taking over. They are leaders of their teams that they're on. Just to sit back and hear them talk to us and just listen. It's probably the most rewarding part of my evening to hear how their day went and hear how their interactions with their peers or their teachers went. It's very rewarding as a parent.
So last question on the kids. So you got 14, 12, and 10, boy, girl, boy. You have all these conversations. You got a mom who's a high-powered attorney who's killing it. And you got a dad who's an athletic director and a coach in multiple sports. Do you see, have any of them started to shape where they think they might go? Like, has any of them said, like you did when you were 6, like, I'm going to be an attorney? Like, does any of them have that path yet, do you think, carved out?
Yes, they say that they do. My oldest says that he's going to be a statistician for the Cleveland Guardians.
Okay.
He's very sports oriented, but he's also, he's like a statistician, a math guru. So he's already kind of honed in on that. And he wants to be a coach. Our daughter wants to either be a teacher or an entrepreneur. And an entrepreneur to her would be to own her own doggy daycare. She goes, okay. I don't want to just work there. I want to be the owner. And I said, okay, all right. And then our son, our youngest son is going to be, he's 10. So he's going to be a professional football player. Right. But then when he retires, so after he makes his millions of dollars and he retires, he then is going to go to law school and become a lawyer.
Okay, there you go. So he's got the best of both worlds right now. He's balancing the best of both worlds. Good. Right. So in shifting gears now into the professional side of things, you ended up focusing a lot in, I know today you're in a lot of the healthcare world. What does that really look like as an attorney practicing in the healthcare space, employment, corporate, in that world? Like, what's that look like today? Because the healthcare system is just jacked up. Like, let's be honest, right? It's crazy. Everywhere you turn, it's crazy. So what does it look like to be an attorney who that's kind of, I don't want to pigeonhole you that that's your specialty, but I know you're kind of known for that now. Yeah. What does that look like day to day? And what are some of the things you work on?
So when I graduated law school, I didn't even know that healthcare attorneys were a thing, right? That it was a specialty. Now they have classes in law school because it's such a large part of our economy. It's, it's one of the largest parts of our GDP. Right. It also is one of the most heavily regulated industry. It's like banking. It's like nuclear energy. It's very heavily regulated. And so from that aspect, it's constantly changing all the time. And I think that's what I like so much about it is it's heavily regulated. So I have to be highly specialized, but I have to be willing to change constantly, right? With any legal updates and updating my clients and think differently about deals. I think your analysis of the healthcare system, it's jacked up. That's a great way to put it. And when I talk to people, they're like, what are you doing to fix it? Well, I always tell people I represent physicians and healthcare providers, and I help them problem solve. They run businesses, they are entrepreneurs, and they have problems, and they work in an industry that's jacked up. So they need problem solvers. And I think of my role as I can come in and I can help them troubleshoot and problem solve, and I can build something positive for them, help them achieve their goals. And that is really fulfilling at the end of the day. That's
and I think about this world. I came out of biotech. My corporate career, I worked for Genentech. I was on the almost the provider side for oncology. And I think about how complicated it was back then. I started this company, 13 years ago now that I run, but I think about just so much complexity in that system. From those who are out there trying to create life-saving drugs to then get them into the market, to then all the regulations on the delivery systems between the healthcare, the hospitals, the physicians, and it's so complex. Help the audience if you were to give like a 30-second, like this is what's This is the primary problem with the complexity of our healthcare system today. In your words, like what would that be?
Well,
Like, why is it so complicated today where other countries have, I'm not saying they figured it out because they haven't. We still have the best healthcare system on the planet by bar none.
yes.
So does that come with it? Does the complexity come with the fact that we still have the best healthcare system, or we've overcomplicated it because of bureaucracy and all the crazy, it's all about money's the answer. What's the question, I guess, right?
Money is always the answer. And I think we have to understand where the money comes from. So most of our healthcare is actually funded by the taxpayers. Right? It's mostly Medicare and Medicaid. It's
Right.
mostly funded by taxpayers, which is why it's so highly regulated. We are trying to protect government funds, which are taxpayer funds. So if you take a step back and you think about, okay, where do these funds come from? Why is it so highly regulated? That makes sense, right? And so when I tell my clients, like, don't get so frustrated. Let's think about why it's so highly regulated. But the frustrating part is sometimes our regulators forget that it's a business as well. And sometimes it's hard to operate a business with the constraints that are in place that are sometimes counterintuitive, especially me as an entrepreneur and representing clients that are entrepreneurs. That can be a little frustrating. And so sometimes I think we lose sight of that.
Do you find that, I know in my experience, a lot of friends who are physicians and a lot of folks in that space, their passion is medicine, it's people, it's learning anatomy and physiology, and it's all that. And they're just not good business people. So they're not all of them. I'm broad brush stroking, but that's part of the issue sometimes, right? And I think that's why we've seen a lot of consolidation with physicians being acquired by larger practices, and because there are people that know how to do business, and they've figured out that, hey, we get the people that know how to do medicine that don't know how to do business, and we'll just put them under the system, which kind of tends to even add more complexity to the system. But
right.
Are you there to help as an attorney? I'm sure in a lot of ways who's smart legally and both business wise, helping some of these physicians and groups understand not just the legal implications, but how to think differently about how to run the practice, as an example.
Absolutely. And you're so right. Medical school teaches them how to become doctors, right? They don't take business courses, which I think is a little short-sighted. And not everyone is going to be an entrepreneur, right? Everyone has a different role to play within the ecosystem that they're in. And all of those roles are very important, right? When we go to law school, nobody gives us a business course as to how to run a law firm. But I think if you can practice medicine and you're an entrepreneur and you can put those two things together, you really create something special.
Yeah.
And that's who I primarily represent. And it's very fulfilling. And when you see the ideas percolating and you're able to really see that come to fruition, that's incredibly rewarding. And that is where we have the innovation in the healthcare system.
Yeah, we need more of that for sure.
Absolutely.
So what's the next 5 years look like for you? Because you're a planner, so I know you got one.
I have one. I want to continue to fulfill my role within the law firm. That's very important for me. I head up, you said I was vice president, but I head up the Department of Business Development and Marketing. So that's very important for me to reach out to the younger attorneys and mentor them and make sure that they have a platform to do whatever it is that they want to do within our law firm, because that platform was afforded to me. So I want to continue to extend that platform and further that platform and really foster, we call it be the incubator for young attorneys that want to be entrepreneurial and build their book of business. So I want to continue to do that. I want to continue to service my clients, continue to be a subject matter expert as healthcare is going to continue to change. And the next 5 years, my kids are going to be going into high school and getting close to graduation. And so just being present for that. I'm on our local school board as well. I've been on our local school board. This is my third term. That's very important. So I think setting that example of giving back to the community, being very present there as a servant leader is really important.
So as a father of two daughters, my oldest is getting married this summer, and she graduated from Ohio State a year ago. And then my youngest is 11, and my daughter, and my son's in the middle. What I love is that you're kind of laying this path out for, in today's world, it doesn't matter You can look at things and say, well, I'm not afforded this, I'm not afforded that. Well, we weren't afforded a lot of things growing up, and we both laid a path out, and it was in pencil, so we were a little bit
That's
nimble
right.
as we went along. But if you were to kind of give some coaching to not only your daughter but my daughter on how they should frame up their mindset for the road ahead, what are some of those last lessons that you would say, hey, these are the things that I've learned to be a female who can be successful at pursuing their dream professionally without compromising it personally? What would be some of those last tidbits of advice that you'd give to our daughters collectively and all the listeners?
I think that females should be super proud to be female. They should never think that they can't do something because they're female, that they can't advance or that they can't have children. You can have it all. We know that females are better at multitasking, right? So take advantage of that. We are great listeners.
I'm sorry, what'd you say? I wasn't, what'd you say? You almost answered. I almost got
That's
you.
right. That's right. So see, I'm actively listening. But I think that they can do whatever they want to do. And yes, you can have it all. You got to define what all is for you. Because what all is for me may not be all for my daughter or for your daughter. But you define your own destiny and you define what's important to you. And don't let anyone stop you from doing that. I feel very fulfilled every day as a wife, as a mother, as a lawyer. But what fulfills me is going to be different than what fulfills someone else. And that's okay. And accepting that, I think, is half the battle as well. Accepting that for yourself.
I think that's so important. And so many, especially I think about this as a dad who's raised daughters and is currently raising daughters, is sometimes they look out, especially social media today has gotten so out of control. It's when I was younger, I'm probably a little older than you, certainly older than you. We didn't have all this. It was hard enough to just try to live up to the expectations you're putting on yourself around your peer group, physically in school.
Right,
but now
right.
They've got this world out there in social media. And I think it's particularly difficult on young women to live up to this standard of they're supposed to be this or that and the other. And I think what you're saying that I really appreciate, and I hope my daughters are listening and the girls are listening, is what is your dream? And what is your vision for who you want to be, how God designed you to be? And then what are you doing to pursue that with passion and not let anybody stand in the way of it? But don't put yourself up on, I'm supposed to be Amanda.
Right, absolutely.
I'm supposed to be fill in the blank. Finding that path for yourself and then being committed to that path and not wavering off of it. That's what I heard you say. Is that right?
Absolutely. I work very closely with a colleague. She's a mother of three. And she is part-time, and she doesn't have aspirations of having a large book of business like me. And this year we had a talk about whether she feels fulfilled in what she's doing. And I just told her how proud of her I am, because she has developed a particular niche area in tax that no one else in the country really has. And now she is the go-to person. And she really supports a lot of my clients. And I rely on her, and she is very important and vital to the team. And she said, I feel very fulfilled by that. I don't have aspirations of going out and speaking at these large tax conferences, but I have fulfilled a really important role here, and I'm a really important part of the team, and I'm valued here, and I'm killing it at home with my kids and, doing a great job. And that was really exciting to have that conversation with her and to continue to have that conversation with her and check in and say, is this still your dream? Are these still your goals? Are you still fulfilled? Are we still rowing in the same direction? And she's not an Amanda and I'm not her, but we're really, really important to each other. And we really value what each other brings to the table and what we're doing at home.
Well, kudos to you, because I think a lot of times leadership, we look at something like that and go, well, why aren't you out on the circuit speaking? Why aren't you bringing more attention to the firm? Why aren't you bringing more attention to yourself? And we, as leaders, we mean well, by it because we see potential in others. And that's part of being a leader, right? Is seeing potential in the others and speaking that into them. But if it's not part of their personal vision, it's actually counterproductive to where they're going. And so kudos to you for recognizing that. And boy, that was a little bonus lesson I didn't know we were going to get to today is don't try to form people into the image of what you think they should be, but truly understand who they are, how they were wired, and where they're trying to go, and help them get there. In fact, sometimes it's better to pull people back, and when you see that they're actually pushing themselves into the red line past who they really want to be, because they're trying to live up to expectations someone else laid at their feet, right?
That's so true. That's so true. And are they going to be happy, right? So I think that's really important as a mentor to recognize that and embrace that.
Well, Amanda, this has been great. I know we could probably go for another hour unpacking all kinds of different examples and experiences that you had, and maybe we'll have you back on to do that at some point. I really wanted to just get the audience to get to know you a little bit better. I wanted to get to know you a little bit better, hear your story, and let it be inspirational to those out there, not just young girls and females, working moms. It doesn't matter, men as well. I mean, we all learned a lot of lessons. I learned a lot of lessons from you just in this episode. But I think it's motivational and inspiration to see that you can have a dream, you can pursue it, and you don't have to compromise what your passions are professionally with what your purpose is personally. And I think you've done a great job of that. So kudos to you for that. Best of luck to you in the future and your family and your husband, your kids. And I look forward to staying connected to you and seeing what you do next.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
The pleasure is all mine. We'll have you back on again soon.